I didn't like the circumstance of how that happened. That was the only time I got spooked in Fairmount, where he got dressed, put on this white scarf, and we walked to a shop that first appeared as a furniture shop. He said, I want to show you something. And we went into the furniture shop, made a left turn, and ended up in a room full of coffins. And he jumped into one. And he started making these very infantile expressions. And I hated it. I said, what the hell are you doing? Oh, take my picture, take my picture. And so I indulged him in it with great reluctance. And just at the very end, I made my summation of what I experienced with the sitting up at the lost boy sitting in a coffin, yeah? And a few months later, he died.
The critics raved about Dean's performance in East of Eden, and the movie became a hit. Jimmy's portrayal of Cal, a hell-raising teenager who yearned to be loved and accepted by his stern, deeply religious father, struck a chord with teenagers far more eloquently than any previous actor. David Putnam.
I didn't meet my father till I was 5 because he was away in the war, and I was absolutely devoted to him. And by the time 1955, 56 rolled around and I was 15, it was getting a complicated relationship, and I was going through a lot of changes. And East of Eden helped me enormously because it both justified the confusion I was going through, but it also had the catharsis of the ending, which allowed me to feel it was fine to still adore my dad.
You used to say that was where you...
And I remember the first time I saw the film, and in fact, ever since, absolutely crying my eyes out at the final scene when the father's had the stroke in bed, when he shouts at the nurse.
See, I do remember.
Look, I can't find any coffee.
Get out!
To do something for me.
Yes.
It summed up exactly my journey and where I hoped to arrive, which is to be absolutely reconciled with and be able to convey to my father how much I admired and loved him.
What did he say?
He said, don't get anybody else. He said, you stay with me. You take care of me. Oh.
Alan Parker.
The great artistic work is East of Eden, without a doubt, which I think is pretty great. The reason that he became so iconoclastic, whatever the word is that the first one was classic teenage thing. He was a rebel, and that's what we thought all of us ought to be if you were a teenager.
Martin Landau.
Jimmy had a sense that things were going to change for him, but it didn't change him a lot. It just made him aware that things were happening. There was almost a kinesthetic response to stuff. In terms of his fame, he experienced some of it.
Jimmy always said that he was going to be a star someday.
James Dean's cousin, Marcus Winslow Jr.
I'll never forget, he bought a motorcycle one time in California, and the guy told me himself, he said, before Jimmy rode it away from the shop, why, East of Eden hadn't been released yet, apparently, and Jimmy told the fellow, he said, if you want to come out here and take some pictures of me on this motorcycle, he said, you're welcome to, because he said, I'm going to be famous someday, and the guy just kind of laughed it off and said, boy, that was the biggest mistake I ever made in my life. I think Jimmy, he had a lot of confidence in himself, and I think that he was pretty determined that he was going to go to the top, and he was also going to do it just as fast as he could.
Dennis Stock.
East of Eden premiered in New York City. In fact, I photographed him in front of the marquee with Eartha Kitt, and he looked slovenly. He looked like hell. He didn't look like the star of a successful Hollywood film, you know. It didn't affect him.
Jimmy celebrated the film's success by buying his first Porsche racing car and entering his first road race. The following week, he started work on Nicholas Ray's movie about middle-class delinquents in L.A. Rebel Without a Cause was to become a classic.
I think that you can't just go around proving things and pretending like you're tough.
That's right.
You can't, even though you look a certain way, you can't.
That's right. You're absolutely.
You're
absolutely right.
You're not listening to me. You're involved in this just like I am.
You can't be idealistic all your life, Jim. Nobody thanks you for sticking your neck
Except to
out.
yourself.
The movie featured early performances from 3 other young Hollywood stars: Sal Mineo, Natalie Wood, and Dennis Hopper.
The first time I saw him, he was walking down a hallway, Warner Brothers, and he had about a week's growth of beard, and he was hanging a cigarette out of his mouth, and very thick glasses on. And my agent said, "That's James Dean." And I said, "That's James Dean." On East of Eden, Kazan had the whole crew and cast line up outside soundstage. Kazan said, "You're going to meet a boy, and he's going to be very strange to you, and he's going to be different. But no matter what you see or what you think of him, when you see him on the screen, he's going to be pure gold." Then he said, "I want you to meet James Dean." And they opened the soundstage door, and James Dean came out and went, "Q, Q, 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 Q." And Raymond Massey was standing there, a very religious man who doesn't like any kind of cussing on the set. He turned to Kazan and he said, "What price is gold?"
George Perry.
The set of Rebel Without a Cause was absolutely throbbing with all kinds of liaisons and tensions. Nicholas Ray is actually having an affair with Natalie Wood, who was only a teenager. To complicate matters, she was also Dennis Hopper's girlfriend, so Dennis was extremely angry over it all, and he was relegated to a lesser role because of that anger. Then Sal Mineo was besotted by James Dean and totally unrequited. It was a very extraordinary affair.
Sal Mineo.
I was to read for Nick Ray, and I went to Nick's hotel, and he introduced me to Jimmy. It was on a Sunday afternoon. And he said, "I'd just like to go over a couple of scenes." So I started reading the scene with Jimmy. And then Nick said, "Now let's put the script away." And he said, "Can you do improvisations?" And of course I said yes. I wanted that role very badly. I had no idea what he was talking about. And I picked it up from Jimmy. I realized that Jimmy was doing the scene, but he was using different dialogue. And I realized that that's what improvisations are, that you just don't do the dialogue that's written, you make up your own dialogue. And so we improvised the sequence.
Natalie Wood.
Really, he was not a rebel in the sense that he was not rejecting parents. He wasn't sort of saying, "Leave me alone, I don't want to have anything to do with you, I'm going to do my own thing." He was really saying, "Listen to me, hear me, love me." He was just trying to get that connection, so much in Rebel, the scene where he was saying to his father, he was trying to make the parents into people that he could love and into people that would help him.
I tried to get to know him. Started by saying hello, no answer. He wouldn't talk to people on the set. He would be into himself, into his thing. He'd lock himself up into his dressing room. Finally, about halfway through the picture in the Chickie run, it was at night, I grabbed him and literally threw him into a car and said, "Look, I really want to be a great actor too, and I want to know what you're doing. I want to know what your secret is." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I want to be a great actor." He says, "Why do you want to be a great actor?"